Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Imaginary Invalid by Moliere. This Jean-Baptiste Moliere comedy ballet, The Imaginary Invalid, is a 3-act work. There are operatic and dramatic elements to the work, and it was a favorite of Louis XVI, who had it performed frequently at his castle. Dancing and fireworks were included into each performance, making for a spectacular show. Among French and international literature, this is one of the best-known comedies. Moliere's work is ageless because it deals with universal moral and social issues that are relevant today as well as in the past. Not only is the work amusing, but it also has an educational purpose. A hypochondriac, a man who exaggerates or fabricates his symptoms, is used as a metaphor for society's ills. On the one hand, there's a man who transforms everything into a disease. Because it was simpler for him to deal with life that way, if something was upsetting him, he would make it into an illness and avoid dealing with the true issue. Other doctors are like usurers who profit from encouraging people to get sick in order to make money. In order to assure their own survival, they rely on the terror of the wealthy man and his unstable mental state. In some ways, this dilemma might be seen as an issue of our day. People who simply wanted what was best for the affluent Argan, the fictional invalid, surrounded himself with. All they care about is curing the elderly guy of his mental ailment. It is their goal to convince him that his diseases are all in his head and expose the greedy doctors who are profiting from his sufferings. It's a nice conclusion even if the old man nearly drove everyone away from him. Moliere's work conveyed an important message while also showcasing his artistic talents. It's also enjoyable, easy to follow, and brimming with brilliant jokes and puns. To begin, Argan has to deal with the monthly costs of his treatment. Antoinette's eyes is the hypochondriac irony of his hypochondria. Argan is married with 2 children from a prior relationship. The dialogue between Angelique and Toinette reveals that Angelique is in love, but she's not sure if it's reciprocated. As a father, Argan promised his daughter that he would wed her to a guy of excellent character. For the sake of his health, the man wants to marry him to a doctor's son who is a student of medicine so that he can receive continual medical attention. Clement turned out to be Thomas Diafoirus rather than Clement, who Angelique had previously thought. Thomas was set to follow in his uncle Pergin's footsteps as a doctor. Pauline, his second wife, wants to send their 2 kids to a convent, and he does not like it. And so, Toinette wished to be an ally of Angelique's in her efforts to elude marriage to Thomas by whatever means necessary. Both Pauline's husband's health and the inheritance and will were feigned interest at the same time. Still, she inquired about the amount of money she'll receive, and even called a lawyer to finish the will. If Angelique pretended to be on Pauline's side, Toinette would support her, but only if she pretended to be on her side. Angelique's enormous love. Clement is informed by Toinette that Argan intends to wed her to another guy. It would be great if the 2 of them had a conversation, but Clement doesn't want to appear as her future husband, so he pretends he is her substitute music teacher. Let him in, and you have to teach her in front of your father, Toinette. In addition to letting him know that his prospective son-in-law was on his way, Argan also requested him to join him in the wedding. Argan had no reason to be suspicious. There is a lot of discussion regarding Argan's strange sickness and how it might be treated. Almost immediately after the physicians arrived, Argan offered Clement and his daughter the opportunity to play a song or 2 for them. Clement came up with the idea of performing an improv to explain his current predicament with Angelique. Argan halted the performance because he was unhappy with it. After the commotion she caused and the way she refused to marry the guy her father had planned for her, Argan doesn't want to hear about Angelique. To remind Argan of the necessity of his cane, the maid arrived. However, Argan's fictitious sickness prevents him from walking without it. At least, it is what Beralda attempts to persuade his brother to believe. She asks her parents for more time with Thomas, but in truth she was merely putting off the wedding by pleading with them for more time. They agreed that she should get married quickly, so the stepmom threatened her with a convent and the father issued an ultimatum: either she gets married or she goes to a convent. A scheme is devised by Toinette and Beryl to help Beryl's niece and stop her from wedding. They also devise a strategy to undermine Argan's faith in his doctors, believing that doing so will be beneficial to his health. Beralda tries to persuade his brother Argan not to wed his daughter to Thomas's son-in-law. Beralda tries to convince Florent not to give Argan an enema because he's a hypochondriac, but the pharmacist refuses. When the pharmacist returns home, Argan is nowhere to be found. Perkin arrives and expresses dissatisfaction with Argan's work. His doctor finally chooses to step down and wishes him anguish. In the face of terror, Argan spirals out of control, But Beryl is able to restore some order to the situation. Then Toinette shows up and announces the presence of a doctor. The doctor in the next scene is Toinette herself. Beralda tries to tell Argan that his wife is a fraud and that she was taking advantage of him after the phony doctor left. Another thing he confessed to him was the existence of his own daughter, who, despite her love for her father, he intends to send away into a convent. His wife, Toinette, came to his aid and the two of them persuaded him to fake his own death so that he could find out what she had planned. Argan is skeptical, but he accepts to take the challenge. Argan sat on the bed and pretended to be dead. Beralda noticed. Toinette tells Beline that her spouse died. In order to make sure, Beline walks to the room and when she finds him on the bed she starts yelling that she needs to grab all the money and bonds now that she has finally gotten rid of her spouse. Argan gets up, yells at her, and she walks away. When Beline believed her husband was dead, she displayed her true face, and Beralda proposed that his daughter Angelique do the same to see how she reacted. While cleaning up her gardening day, Argan finally recognizes the good in his daughter who was upset that her father couldn't give her his blessings because he was away. Despite her best efforts, she could not be comforted. In the end, Angelique decided to give up Clent away and follow her father's wishes and enter the convent. His mercy and blessings are bestowed upon the two lovers by Argan. In addition, he informed Clent that if he wants to take care of him, he must become a doctor. As Beralda points out, there's another possibility. He advised Argan to pursue a medical career of his own. Because Beralda had some clout in the college fraternity, he was able to get his medical license granted to him the very next day. When Argan was getting ready for the event, Beralda informed him that actors were reenacting the proceedings. And then Argan showed there, completely unaware that Beralda had invited him to mimic his own doctorate. Biography of Moliere. On par with Corneille and Racine, Jean-Baptiste Poquelin Moliere grew up in 1622 and is one of France's best-known comedy authors. He is the greatest French playwright of the 17th century's golden age of playwriting. For more than only his writing, Moliere was a scriptwriter and a pioneer of humoristic satire. A lawyer had originally planned on becoming an actor and director, but he gave that up in favor of a career in the theater, where he remained for the remainder of his life. He penned 33 comedies during his career. It's said that the 17th-century French society is reflected in some of these poems, which were written in verse and prose. Moliere always endeavored to give a complete picture of the social layers and their characteristics. To him, intellect was equated with nature and everything that didn't fit that definition was derided. Tartuffe, The Misanthrope, Don Juan, and The School for Husbands are among his best-known comedies. For his burlesque performances following the performances of his tragedies, he became a household name. Later in his career, he concentrated on creating musicals. He had tuberculosis and died in Paris on February 17, 1673, barely hours after coughing blood on stage. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this.